start that over. So as many of you know, we start our events at Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light with land acknowledgements. A land acknowledgement is one of many ways to resist the erasure of Indigenous histories, as well as to honor tribes and the land itself. So we are located within the unceded territories of Northwest Native Nations. Our office is on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past, present, and future. And I would love it if I could really quickly get to know everyone. So in the chat, if you could put your name, where you're located, and congregation, if that is applicable. And then I'm going to start sharing my screen in just a moment. Hmm. Okay, I saw a lot of interactions rolling in. I can no longer see the chat, but I just trust that we are all introducing ourselves. So again, welcome to Planting Seeds of Resilience, Cultivating Hope in Times of Environmental Crisis. So the training objectives are right here. We have one, we want to define and understand what resilience even is. We want to define and understand what eco-anxiety is. Oops. And then we want to do a little bit of practice after we explore different methods of building resiliency in the face of climate change. And as a reminder, this is an introduction to the topic of resilience and eco-anxiety, and it's a topic with a ton of nuance and diverse experiences. So this training is just meant to be introductory and will not at all encapsulate every instance where ecological related anxieties might occur. So first up is, what is resilience? The definition I'm using is from the APA, so lots of mental health professionals coming up with this definition. And they define it as resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. So while resilience involves being able to recover and move forward from difficult situations, it can also and oftentimes requires a lot of personal growth as well. So being resilient doesn't mean that you are not going to experience things that are difficult or cause you distress. Oftentimes, when it comes to resiliency, you are practicing these methods and continuing to move forward um, because you experienced something that was hard and you had the skills to continue moving forward. And increasing your resilience to whatever the topic may be. Right now, eco-anxiety and the world is what our topic is. It takes time and it takes a lot of intentionality. So focusing on the steps we will discuss later in this training will set you on the path to hopefully being able to deal with difficult experiences without falling into despair, and maybe help people in your life who you see struggling with these issues as well. And then we have eco-anxiety. This definition comes from Yale, and it is the distress about climate change and its impacts on the landscape and human existence. And this is a fairly new term that's come into play. So it's a concept. It's something that has always been around. It's not new. Um, we just haven't put words to it yet. But eco anxiety, eco grief, climate anxiety, climate grief are kind of becoming a front and center term. So that is why we are going to talk about it in this context, especially as it starts to take center stage more and more. Um, and a lot about climate anxiety, it's not a like therapist term. Like you can't be not diagnosed with climate anxiety. It's just you have anxiety around this topic. And it stems from like the science that we are exposed to all the time, learning the dangers of different things that we didn't know were dangerous, learning about how dangerous stuff we thought were just, moderately dangerous were, and new science of how long we have to save the world. So that is increasing climate anxiety among people, especially younger generations. And there's a greater awareness to global inequality, which exacerbates the anxiety you feel towards what is happening globally. And then you know that other communities are facing even worse dangers that sometimes where we originate from might be the cause of. And because of that, sometimes there's guilt of our own personal or community responsibility for what's going on in the world, and having to deal with people in elected positions of power not acting as urgent as they should, or completely acting against what would benefit people. And it's understandable because climate change itself is a very multifaceted issue with no clear solution. And there's no one specific call to action. It is many things all the time, and it's constantly evolving. And there's different urgencies in different communities around different issues. So it can be a lot. And so eco-anxiety is a thing we can now name and work on building resilience to. And I just want to share a quote really quickly. So this is a dark time filled with suffering and uncertainty. Like living cells in a larger body, it is natural that we feel the trauma of our world. So do not be afraid of the anguish you feel, or the anger or fear, because these responses arise from the depth of your caring and the truth of your interconnectedness with all beings. And Joanna Macy. And so on that note, what we want to do is not ignore what we are feeling and not push away what we are feeling. So here are 6 things you can do to help foster resilience within you, which you can take and help other people do as well. So one of them, which is a really big one and is a really hard one, and one I struggle with, is acknowledging your feelings. So being able to identify and process your feelings on climate in general, being able to identify and process feelings about the greening work you may do in your congregation, whether it's, I'm mad because people won't even use reusable utensils, or it's joy of like we finally were able to get solar on our building, whatever it may be, whatever you're doing, wherever you are at, being able to acknowledge that feeling. And it could be, I don't like to, put it in different categories, but being able to feel things like anger and sadness, grief, being able to feel joy in that something was successful. At Earth Ministry right now, there is a sense of grief. We've been working on a project to stop it's the GTN Express. I should name that first. To stop it, because we do not want pipelines being used at all. We don't want them expanded. We know how harmful it is to the communities. And it's been an ongoing process, and it was just approved. And so something we worked really hard on and we were really hopeful for. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, just it being delayed, the decision, and then it moving, and then it seeming like it's going to stop, and then ultimately they pushed it through. There's a lot of grief around that. And being able to acknowledge that grief and then pause and think of, okay, so what is next? What will we do next with ourselves? Is necessary for this work that we all do. And everyone here is here because they care about the environment and they have some emotional, physical stake in it. So that's a really big thing to be able to do. Another one is embracing connection. So you are not alone. And sometimes it can feel that way. Sometimes maybe how you perceive other people to be processing or moving through stuff makes it feel like they don't care. But you aren't alone. And you have to be able to embrace connection with other people, because isolation and being lonely can cause a disconnected feeling from everything else around you. Whether it's, your home life, your congregation, the society we live in general. It's very easy to just disconnect and feel like you're all alone in this work, but you aren't. You have your family, you have your friends, you have people at your congregation. Even if it's not a ton of people, I'm sure everyone has someone that they can go to for these issues. And isolating yourself can happen when you're feeling overwhelmed. And when that happens, it can lead to excessively negative feelings. I don't like putting negative on feelings, but the darker ones that make you a bit more grumpy, those feelings come out. And so it's important to be around not just anyone, but like-minded people where you can share your feelings and your ideas comfortably. Another one is being able to calm yourself. So calm your nervous system. And everyone's different. So what you should find a way to soothe yourself that works for you. And some examples of this, aside from social connection, could be breathing exercises or meditations. There's a ton of videos and on YouTube and apps that can help you with breathing exercises and meditations. And after the training, we will be sharing resources. So everything I say, you can go find people, apps, videos that will also help you. Meditation is another big one. That's a very popular thing people do. And then using a sound machine. So that might work for some, might not, whether it's, you have white noise, pink noise, brown noise going, or it's something like listening to birds chirp or the ocean. Being able to have something that calms you down. It could also be physical things. So maybe exercising really aggressively will calm you down. Maybe just going on a leisurely stroll. Maybe just sitting in a forest. Anything of that nature that will calm you down is something you should get in the habit of doing. Another one is resist the urge to catastrophize. So it's very easy to do this, just the way media works, whether it's newspaper, it's television, it's social media. It's very easy to only get part of the picture. And when you do that, it's very easy to see only the negative and thinking in black and white, good, bad. We want to avoid doing that. So thinking of like doom scenarios, it's always good to practice balance. So, okay, something really bad happened. What is something good that could come out of it or has come out of it? Whether it's, we rallied around the GTN Express to try and get it to stop. The bad is it was approved. The good is we were able to make a lot more community connections in the meanwhile. And we have these communities that know we're willing to go out for them, work on these issues. They know they have someone that they can turn to if they need resources or to amplify their voices, or they can amplify our voice because we're not in that area of the state right now, the staff physically. So good does come out of things. And again, media might not always present the whole story. That's always something to keep in mind. A lot of work is being done. constantly. Everyone who is in this webinar is someone who is doing something. And that should be a way that should be a reminder for you and be something that allows yourself to foster hope. That work is constantly being done. And remembering that anxiety and grief can coexist with other emotions. So you can be anxious and hopeful at the same time. A lot of times, the reason why people continue doing the hard work that they do is because they do have hope that something good will happen or that they're doing something impactful and meaningful. But sometimes you have to remind yourself of that. It's very easy to just dive in and not see anything else. And then practices that allow you to stay present. So again, things like meditating can help with that. Something very important is be realistic. So it is wonderful to dream big, but if you're only dreaming big and something happens that big dream is shut down, it's very easy to fall into despair or feel like what you were working on in the end didn't make a difference. And that's just not true. You had to do a bunch of things to get to that point in the first place. So try and think in those smaller goals with the hope of something big happening, but don't lose sight of everything in between. And that can include like mobilizing for collective and socially engaged action. So a lot of it happens naturally. If you're trying to get a petition signed, you're working with other people, keeps you from being isolated, is an emotional support, and there are tangible things that are going to be done that you can do, you can succeed at, and have realistic small goals along the way. And then another thing is just replenishing yourself. So it's a way of balancing your emotional ecosystem. So you want to encourage thoughts and feelings and ideas of things like gratitude. So this work is not easy. It can be very draining. But what are you grateful for? I'm grateful that this work can be very stressful and depressing, when things don't go our way. But I'm grateful that I can then do trainings like this and be with people who care about the same things I do. And if you were working on a project and it got approved, or you got your congregation to finally switch over to not using single-use items, or you're able to green your space with a garden, having pride about that. Or if you have hopes and dreams for what you want to do in your space, whether it's at home, congregation, in your larger community, the excitement behind these projects is very important to keep in mind. You want to be able to handle not so great stuff with great stuff, things that make you proud and excited. And then above all, it's not on here. Just a little plug. If it's hard to do this, it's okay. Sometimes a lot of the work that I am sharing with you all comes from therapists. And so they give all of these cool tools to do these things, but in the end, they are like, if you need help, seek help. And so if that is therapy, that is therapy. If it's, someone, your pastor, someone who you look to for guidance, seek help from those people. Because I can just say all of these things, but it's not always that easy. And it's okay that it's not easy. Okay, now we're going to reflect a little bit. So we're going to talk about COVID for just a little bit. And as everyone knows, it was a global pandemic that changed the course of all of our lives. And this global health crisis forced new ways of living and working in ways that we have never seen. Um, and the idea here is I want everyone to take a moment and think of what ways did your own resilient practices come into play while we were in the early stages of the pandemic? And so there are different areas, just three that I have up is health. So what new health concerns came up when precautions were put in place for yourself and your loved ones? For example, like a precaution or something I had to be super mindful of is I have asthma. And so when a virus comes out that attacks your respiratory system, it was a constant, am I having an asthma attack? Do I have COVID? And so having to put in practice regularly testing myself and isolating. The idea of social. So how did you manage to maintain connection with loved ones during the early months of COVID? So I lived near Green Lake at the time, and so just seeing how many more people were out walking, or did you have your social distance hub? I forget what they were called. Did you use them in the early months of COVID, or for school and work? How did you have to adjust your ways of operating at school or work? Um, I graduated in 2020 from grad school, so that was like a very steep shift in how we operated that we just had to do, and we came out better for it. I know how to use Zoom now, and it's been very handy in my job currently. So things like that. There's a ton of other things that people had to adjust. So I just want to take a moment for everyone to sit and ponder, because we will go into breakout rooms next, where we will think of how we were resilient in COVID. What did we do? But how can we apply those things to climate work? Okay. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. There will be two rooms. I will be in one, and AC will be in the other. And I'll type in the question again, but again, upon reflecting about the resilience and your practices in COVID, how can you apply those practices to climate work is the question. And then after that, me and AC will be sharing out some things that we heard in the room that were very interesting or insightful or touched us in any way afterwards. And AC is going to do the sorting for me.
Oh my goodness. Welcome back, everyone. Those of you who are joining back, I know maybe what happened in the other group happened in our group, which is somebody got cut off mid-sentence. So I hope that you found that time engaging um, and maybe just a little bit hopeful in the ways in which we connect with one another. So um, Kia and I are going to take just a minute to share just kind of an overarching thought of what we were kind of hearing, both hearing in our different groups, and then get into the kind of last pieces before we say thank you and good evening and allow you to, or hope that you get out and do what it is you need to do to care for yourself and your own resilience. So, uh, Kia, what were some of the things that you were hearing in your conversations?
So a lot of us had the same feelings of our sense of community grew. So meeting more regularly with family and friends and being able to spend time with people that you can't be with in person. It was a lot more normalized. And so many people, even today, are still doing things that happened that they started doing in COVID, like meeting with family. Um, and then another thing was walking. So we're not all stuck in the house. We did lots of walking. And for some of us, it was more than usual. For a couple of us, it was we never go outside, me being one of those. Now, what else am I going to do? Let's go on a walk. Let's get in touch with nature. It's not an abstract thing. It's something like we can, step outside and enjoy. Um, and then one thing important that was brought up, which is a much bigger discussion, was that younger people had it the hardest when it came to COVID, um, compared to adults who have better skills for, you can go play, you can go to work, you can, be on your phone, you pay for the internet, etc. Whereas kids are still learning how to be social and going to school and missing out on much needed connection when they're young. Um, and so that was just a point that was brought up that I think is very important because we're all in the same generation-ish. So it's easy to just look at ourselves and then forget, who else was deeply impacted by this as well. So I thought that was very important to bring up, especially when it comes to climate work. It's the youths who are doing a lot of the hooting and hollering right now. So they're very important to bring into the conversation.
I just want to check, like, do I still get to count as a youth? No? Dang.
I don't think so.
I'm trying to embody the thing you talked about resilience, Kia, with this joy. Maybe it's unrealistic joy that I'm still a youth, but I'm gonna hold on to it.
You can have
Thank
joy in being the age that you are.
Thank you. I think that some of the conversations that you were having in your breakout room were similar to ours of like there of course along with COVID and climate change was a lot and is a lot of unknowns, right? There are just so many big pieces that we don't know and didn't know how to navigate and don't know how things will turn out, don't know what things will look like, what our environment will look like, what the earth will look like. And so there was this sense of uh, I think sometimes when we think about eco anxiety and some of the anxiety and grief that came along with COVID, it's this um, there's only a negative perception when there was a lot of positive that came out along with it too. The number of people that were like, as an introvert, it was amazing because I got I got a break time at the beginning. For us extroverts, it was a challenge. But but the other piece that came out kind of clearly and in different ways in our group was this conversation about the ways in which the earth will survive, the ways in which the planet will survive it might look different than what it looks like right now. It might, our lives and our environment, our world will look kind of drastically, or could look drastically different, but the planet and people, like the ways in which nature has this ability to adapt and be resilient and grow and also bring us joy, and that we can see the beauty in the earth even through simple actions, is quite powerful. And I think the last kind of really interesting thing is this piece that came out, for at least for me, was this piece around, when we talk about eco anxiety, we also talk about, you mentioned like isolation and not wanting to become isolated. But there could be also, one of the tensions in COVID was this isolation between communities who believed the things that were happening about COVID, about vaccines, about the need to care for each other, the care for community, and those who did not find it as important. And there's obviously much overlap over those two. But as we're doing this environmental work, there's this hope that we don't also try to segment ourselves into groups of those who just care about the climate and those who don't. So how can we continue to work to create connections and relationships between multiple communities? Those of us who maybe have a lot more interested in being involved in eco justice, and those who find their passions and their interests in other places.
Thank you for sharing what your group was talking about. Now, before we do anything else, we love progress, and we love to make things better and what you all want to see. So we have a survey for everyone. The AC is going to put up. It's mostly just a check kind of thing. If you could please do that so we could know, is this what you like? Would you prefer something else? What is most beneficial for you all? That'd be very much appreciated. Cassie, do you have a question?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my pad. I just wanted to say that my preference is someone providing a core message that then we can talk about, kind of like what you did. So it's a combination of the two.
Thank you.
Give you a couple, like one more minute to kind of fill out. And if it goes by too quickly and you don't get your thoughts in, let us know, and we can certainly you can put your thoughts in the chat if the poll closes too soon. Yeah, Thor, I see your hand.
I just got a question for the group. I work with New Orleans interfaith group. Wonderful, wonderful, nice people. But there's a drought on the Mississippi, and it's getting very close to the level that their intakes for fresh water will be contaminated with salt water. It's very hard to give that message. And my fear is it's going to just catch them off guard, that literally they're going to get a week or two notice with a water district to say, hey, It isn't about conserving water anymore. We just don't have it. I want people to be prepared for these things, but I don't know how to message it when nobody wants to listen.
And maybe this is, I know the drought is something that you talk about often in our conversations, Thor. And so I'm wondering, maybe it's something that like you and I can, and maybe you and Kia and I can talk about how to brainstorm about places that like we can initiate one of these conversations, because I know you do a lot of these conversations in the Midwest and other places. So I'd love to figure out how we can do some more conversations around drought and water here. Thanks, Thor. Hi, Francis.
Hi there. I've just finished reading a book called Disasterology. I wish I could remember the name of the author, but she does emergency planning, and her message is that we need to scrap the whole system and start all over again, because the system is designed to help those who already have resources, and to ignore those who are resourceless. And this is something that, as a group of faith-based people, we should be working on to change.
Thanks, Francis. And can you put that that book recommendation in the chat?
I can put maybe I'll think of her name when.
Okay. If you think of it,
Yeah.
later, just send it to us, and we'll.
Okay.
Because for those of you who don't know, we've got a community resource page. So if you have ideas and suggestions on resilience, we'd love to learn about them. And then Kia, I will pass it back over to you because we're almost at time.
Disaster.
My screen was hidden behind the answers and I couldn't get from behind there. Well, I just want to thank everyone for, spending, I don't know what the weather's like, but everyone's rooms look very sunny, or at least bright. So thank you for spending it on Zoom tonight with us as we introduce this topic that has come up a lot in our community, and we've been working towards for quite some time now. So thank you for being with Earth Ministry Washington Interfaith Power and Light as we start discussing the topic of resilience and eco-anxiety. I will stay on if anyone has any last minute questions, but good night to everyone.
Okay.
Thank you all.